Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Bluegrass Briefing. This is the one for Monday the 8th of May 2023. So, main podcast news, the first part of the Tony Rice Church Street Blues 40th anniversary celebration is out now, so if you've missed that, go and grab that and have a listen. 2.5 hours of fantastic guests talking about Tony Rice, including Alison Krauss, Bryan Sutton, Wyatt Rice, of course, Mike Marshall, Tim Stafford. Brilliant. Lots of fun to record, full of just such interesting insight from those people about Tony, about Church Street Blues. Part 2 is out this week and features a bunch of people inspired by Tony, including Bob Minner, including Jake Eddy, Marcel from the Lessons with Marcel YouTube channel. Loads of people, really good stuff in that one. That's worth a listen to, and that's out later this week. In the meantime, if you are wanting more Tony Rice content, I'll stick some links in the show notes to a couple of previous interviews. I did one with Chris Eldridge when Punch Brothers released Hell on Church Street about making that record. We certainly go into it in quite a bit of detail, amongst other stuff, and that's worth a listen. And also Dan Tominski, when he put out his Tribute to Tony Rice EP last year, I spoke to Dan, and that's an interesting one as well. So if you can't get enough Tony Rice content and you missed those, I will stick a link in the show notes. Go and grab those. Definitely worth a listen. And I think also what I'm going to do is put out the chat I had with Wyatt Rice as a standalone episode once these Tony things are out of the way, because there's more of that. It wasn't all necessarily relevant to Church Street Blues, and I cut it down a bit, but there's a lot more stuff in there, just details of things you did with Tony, sort of hanging out together, just like, you know, not necessarily groundbreaking stuff, but lots of really interesting little bits just about, you know, hearing Wyatt talk about hanging out with Tony. And I think it was a really nice conversation to have from my perspective, and I think a lot of you would really enjoy hearing that as well. So I'm going to edit a longer version of that together and put out in a week or two as well. So if you don't want to miss that, add your name to the mailing list. I'll email you when it's out. The link is on the homepage of the website. It's in the show notes here. It's also in the link in bio on my Instagram. So yeah, or just email me, Matt, at bluegrassjamalong.com, and say please add me to the mailing list. But yeah, that's it for pod stuff for now. Which leads into Church Street news, and I think the main thing this week, just to sort of mention the passing of Gordon Lightfoot, such a huge influence on Tony, you know, just as an artist, but also the song choices, particularly on Church Street Blues. You know, Gordon is represented very well on there, and it feels fitting within the period we're talking about Tony to just commemorate the passing of Gordon and like sort of tip our hats to him, really. Yeah, just a long, illustrious career full of great songwriting and great artistry, and sad to see him go. Yeah. And then another bit of news that's Tony Rice related, actually, is on May 26, 27 this year, the inaugural Tony Rice Memorial Day Music Fest at Camp Springs. I believe this year's is sold out. Worth checking. I'll put a link in the show notes anyway. You can go and have a look if there's some tickets left. Good luck for that one. But just get it on your radar for next year. I heard this mentioned in a video on the Lessons with Marcel channel, which I'll talk about a little bit later when we get to Scroll On Buddy. But yeah, the inaugural Tony Rice Memorial Day Music Fest is happening this month. Talking of festivals, I chatted a while ago about one of these, a couple of weeks ago I think it was, about a documentary called My Name is Merle, which was put together for Merlefest. That is now on their YouTube channel. So if you didn't go to the festival, didn't get a chance to see it, like I didn't, I'll be watching that. I'll stick a link in the show notes. Go check that out too. And I had a really nice email from people who run the Heart of the Ozarks Bluegrass Association. There's a non-profit organisation that's celebrating their 40th anniversary, June this year. And many of the members of their organisation are third and fourth generation Ozarks musicians. And that was really cool, really interesting to hear about their 40th anniversary. And I will link to them so you can go and see what's going on with them as well. So hi to you guys. Thanks for emailing. Thanks for getting in touch. And that wraps up this week's Church Street news. And next up is The Grass is New, and this is new releases. So first thing, which is out now, Alison Brown's On Banjo album. There have been a couple of singles from that, including one with Steve Martin and the Kronos Quartet one that I put on the playlist last week. That record is out now. Go and check that out. I will certainly be listening to that in full this week. That's going to be filling my ears. I'm looking forward to that. New Dan Tyminski album. The interview that I mentioned with Dan up front before about the Tony Rice EP, he'd just finished recording a new album with his new band. He was just raving about it. He's very excited about it, and that is out in June. And the single, which I put in the playlist last week, is the first thing we've heard from Dan recently. But yeah, that new record, I've never heard anybody sound so excited about a new record as Dan Tyminski sounded about this. So check out the interview and check out the record when it's out in June. I will remind you again nearer the time when that's out. Something else that's coming in June, UK and Ireland Dobro celebration. Chris and the Chris Eaton's put together, which is basically a celebration of acoustic resonator guitars with a variety of artists from UK and Ireland. It's a really interesting project, so I'm going to go and check that out as well. And that's out in June as well. And that is it for The Grass is New this week. Brings me on to Scroll On Buddy, the stuff I've spotted online in various places. And the interesting thing this week that I saw was Marcel over at the Lessons of the Marcel YouTube channel put together a sort of episode about Tony Rice's guitar, the antique, the D28 that Tony bought that used to belong to Clarence White. A lot of you will know about that. A lot of you will know a lot more than I do about that guitar. But it was a really interesting video. There's a few myths about what happened to that guitar after Tony passed. A few strange stories floating around, and then it surfaced at a Billy Strings gig, and then there are more stories. And so Marcel has been speaking to Lucas White, a sort of friend of the Rice family, who was part of that guitar getting to Billy in the first place, and just dispels some of the myths and shares a bit of info about what's been going on with it. And that's just a fascinating conversation. Lucas is also heavily involved with the Tony Rice Memorial Day Music Fest that I spoke about earlier on in the Church Street News section of this. So that's it. I'll put a link in the show notes as always, but go and watch that. Really interesting sort of 10-15 minute video about Tony's guitar, the history of it, where it's been since Tony passed, how it got into Billy Strings' hands, and a little bit about that festival as well. So yeah, do go check that out. Marcel's videos are always great, and this is a particularly good one. That's it. That's this week's Scroll On Buddy. And then usually at this point, I tell you what's been in my ears this week, what I've been listening to. And other than the stuff that's in the playlist, and also just listening to final bits of interviews for the second episode for Tony to get those edited down, I haven't been listening to much. And so I thought what I'd do this time is just put out a little call. If you've been listening to anything cool, doesn't need to be a new thing. Could be an old thing, could just be something that you love, you think I ought to know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. Recommend me some music. I'd love to hear what you think I should be listening to at the moment. Also partly because I've signed up to run a half marathon later in the year, so I'm going to be doing some long training runs. I want to fill my ears with some things. So yeah, I'll make a playlist. Suggest some songs, some albums, whatever. Let me know what you love and why, and I will listen to it. And that is it. Just talking of the playlist, actually, I'm going to start taking some tracks off the playlist because it'll get immense otherwise. But what I might do is create a kind of subs bench and move the tracks that come off the playlist into another playlist that just keeps growing and growing and growing, just in case people want something. They can go and check stuff out if it's dropped off there, they want to find it again, or just a nice mix of newish bluegrass stuff to listen to. So I'll create a second playlist as I do that. But yeah, if you want to hear the Grass's new playlist, it is on Spotify. There's a link in the show notes. Go check it out. And that is it for this week. Yeah, don't forget to check out the Tony Rice Part 2 that's coming out. Sign up for the mailing list, all the usual places. Go to the website for chord charts, list of interviews, all the usual stuff. And please, if you enjoy this podcast, tell your friends about it. Go to wherever you get your podcasts, leave me a review or a rating. Anything you can do to share this and get the word out is really, really appreciated. Makes my job a lot easier and really helps. But that is it. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next week. Happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.